Okay, so this is my first podcast for my science journal for the week of January 7th. So this science journal is going to focus on the readings for this week. So the woodcarver poem, there's more to teaching science poem, and then the two articles, 5 good reasons to use science notebooks, and cooperative learning. So first of all, I'm just going to focus on a few major points from each article. So first off, the woodcarver poem. I think the major point in this article that I felt was that how through science we are able to see the potential of nature and the environment in which we live. It also brings to the forefront the inquisitive nature of science, how we can move beyond simply looking at what things are and thinking what this could be, what potential something has, how does it work like that, so it has that questioning nature. And I think this can definitely be transferred into how I will teach science, because I want to give students the freedom to explore their creative ideas and use their divergent thinking in the classroom. Allowing this freedom will let them think outside of the box and come up with some very original ideas. There was also one point in the poem that I kind of learned something more on a personal basis, and that was the one part of the poem which says, after 3 days fasting, I had forgotten gain and success. After 5 days, I had forgotten praise or criticism. And after 7 days, I had forgotten my body with all its limbs. I think what this made me think of personally is that to truly focus on an idea and to embrace our creativity, we have to forget the constraints that people put on us and really focus on what we are doing. And I think in the case of the woodcarver, he became fully embraced and immersed in this idea. Okay, so moving on to the second poem, there's more to teaching science. I think the first thing I thought about when I read this article was that student learning is more ignited, more passionate when they have the opportunity to become active learners. And I think the science classroom is definitely a place where this can happen, because in the science classroom we're able to take risks and take chances, and science is more about experimenting and working and interacting with our surroundings and our environment in order to find answers. So I think this is definitely an exciting thing you can do with your students, is make sure they're active in the classroom. And this is way more important than being focused on the memorization of facts, because as human beings we learn from interacting with others, interacting through our environment. Secondly, one of the important points of this article was how essential it is to have creative problem solving in your classroom. So when you have creative problem solving in your classroom, students are more engaged because they are making sense of situations by creating their own solutions. They're not given facts from a teacher, from some source. They're thinking of the answers themselves, and you're just guiding them. So I think students become more responsible for their own learning when learning takes place in this fashion. Okay, the third article was 5 good reasons to use science notebooks. I'm just going to address the main points of the article and what I think about them. So the first major point was notebooks are thinking tools. I definitely agree with this point, because in education it is important to be able to explain, expand, and defend your thinking, because when you are able to expand on your thinking, you're able to solidify your understanding. You're making sense of the big ideas and concepts and putting them into writing, and not only in writing but communicating them in so many different ways. In the article they used graphs, they used storytelling, they used pictorials, anything, any way they could possibly show their teacher, their classmates, that they were understanding the ideas. Also, notebooks guide teacher instruction. This was another point they had, the second one. I believe this is essential because through the observation of student notebooks, teachers can see what questions the students might have and where their interests are heading. And then this allows us to plan lessons or even plan units around what is relevant and engaging for our students. I think the example in the article was of the snail, and most students had written in their journal that they wondered what snails eat. So then they planned the next few lessons addressing that question. So I think those are the two major points I found from that article. Of course, it supports literacy development as well, because students are using a variety of means of communication and expanding their thinking. They're really challenging how they can communicate these ideas with others. And at the same time, I like the idea of notebooks because they're not as formal, and it gives students more freedom so they don't feel the pressure. So they're more willing to experiment with other ways of knowing. Another huge and crucial aspect of notebooks was that they incorporate the needs and meet the needs of all learners in the classroom. And as we know, this is a huge issue in education as we have such big classroom sizes. We have to meet the needs of each individual learner, which is a very hard task. But through notebooks, teachers are able to do individualized feedback and use prompting to prompt students at their own level. And students who have difficulty writing can draw pictures and use other means of communication. And then one of the things that stood out to me was that English as a second language learners in the classroom, they're able to communicate in their own language first and use pictures because the journals are for them to make sense of their understanding. So through that, then you can get somebody to translate that back, because often these students are very intelligent, but they're left to the side and excluded just because they're forced to communicate in English. So we have to be aware of the different linguistic diversity and different cultural diversity within our classroom. So the final, I'll move on to the final article now, and that was on cooperative learning. And I think there's so many benefits of cooperative learning, and the fact that it promotes communication between each other, that we're working socially to better ourselves as a group and also as individuals, that we can work towards a common goal. And I think the most important point about cooperative learning is that it's not just about working as a group. Like, it's also that each person has to bring their portion to the table, or else the rest of the team, it's either sink or swim. But there's just one other thing I wanted to say about that article, is that in today's world, our societies are becoming extremely connected, and what happens on the other side of the world affects us right here in Regina, Saskatchewan. And at the same time, currently our world is being faced with a unique set of problems, and I believe cooperative learning is essential as it teaches students how to work together to create new ideas and solve problems. And there are unique problems ahead of us, and it's important our students can face the challenges of tomorrow by working together. So that is the end of my podcast for this week. I found the articles overall to be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to what's going to be happening next week. This is Jeffrey Stephen Moser, and I'm out.